So have you ever asked yourself, as a project manager, what are the type of conversations that I should have with my team or any stakeholder in the project for that matter? There are so many of them. But in this video, I'm going to cover 5 critical conversations that are expected from a project manager with any stakeholders, including the project team, including the project board, vendors, and everyone else. So what are these 5? Let's find out. Hello, and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to cover 5 critical project management conversations that you should have. You might be asking why. There are certain statements, there are certain conversations that you have with your team or with any stakeholder in the project that are very important. There are some which are not very important. So I'm only going to cover 5 of them. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Oscar Mbira. I'm a certified program and project manager. In this video, I'm going to cover 5 critical conversations that you should always have as a project manager. These are very important. They help you to succeed. They also help you to deliver the project. They actually help you to have a stress-free environment. They also help you to motivate your team to make sure that things are done. They make sure that every stakeholder is happy in the project. So let's move on. So the first conversation or question that you should be having with your team or any stakeholder is to ask something very basic. Is this aligned to our goals? I can tell you from my experience, there are so many scenarios where stakeholders or even your team members, they come up with so many queries, so many questions to you. And they even come with so many proposals to you. So based on these proposals, one thing you have to make sure is whatever you're doing is in the best interest of the project. So what are you supposed to converse with these guys? What are you supposed to say to these guys? You ask them one big question, and I always do that. You ask them, is this aligned to our project goals? If the answer is negative, I can tell you there's no need to put resources and effort towards that. What's the purpose of doing something which is not going to add value to the project? Working with people, I was in a project where I had about 62 project members. And they had different opinions, I'm telling you. Some of them, they were making sense. Some of them were not making sense at all. So how do you respond to them? You sit with them, ask them, how is it contributing to the project's objectives? How is it contributing to the project's goals? If the answer is not clear, then it means there's a problem. You might not even need what they're suggesting. But if it's going to contribute towards either delivery of the ultimate outcome, or towards delivery of specific phases, then that thing, it makes sense. That suggestion, it makes sense. You can even follow it up. So it's quite important and good that as a project manager, you should always be asking these questions. Is it aligned to our project goals? Is it aligned to our project objective? Is it aligned to our project approach? You know, how is it going to affect stakeholders? Is it going to make everyone deliver their work? So there's so many questions that you have to ask. So this is one of them, which is very, very important. Let's move to the next one. So the second conversation or statement that you should be saying to the stakeholders in a project or team members is, can we review what worked well and what didn't work? You could be asking, Oscar, at what point are we going to ask that? Most projects, unless if it's something very small, but I was involved in big projects, 3, 4, 5 years, they are normally segregated into stages or phases. We call them phases or stages. So after each and every stage or phase, you should be able to sit down with your team. Just do like a post-mortem of what exactly happened in the phase before you move to the next one or before you ask for approval for the next one. Phases in a project, they are very, very important. If you want to understand more about project phases, I've created a video on project phases. You can also watch it on my channel. I'll also leave a link in the description for you to access it quickly. So, to do a review, it depends on the project approach that you are using or methodology. If you are using what is called predictive, or in other ways, it's called waterfall approach, we use what is called a phase gate. At the end of each phase, at the end of each stage, you congregate as a team or representatives of the project team members. You look at what went well, what went right, what went wrong, and how do you avoid it in future. At the end of the day, you're supposed to have what are called lessons learned. So don't make the mistake I've seen with so many other project managers. They think lessons learned, you just do it pre the project or post the project. It should be part of the project from the beginning all the way up to project closure. So it's quite important to do a review of what went wrong, what went right, what can we consolidate, what are the do's and don'ts as you move on to the next project. So it's very important to have that kind of conversation if you're a project manager, and to any stakeholder or to any of your team members. So the third conversation that is expected from a project manager when you're working with your stakeholders and your team members is to ask the question, what is actually blocking progress? I normally do that in each and every meeting that I have with my team, whether it's weekly, monthly, daily, or hourly, or whatever. The basic question I always ask is, are we making progress? Okay? So the team members might say yes, we are making progress, or they might say no, we are not making progress. So the moment they say no, we are not making progress, I'll ask the basic question. What is stopping us? What is stopping us from making progress? What do you need? What can be done? Because at the end of the day, as a project manager, you still need to progress. You still need to make progress on that project. So you ask that question. What needs to be done? Who is supposed to do what? Okay? I can tell you from my experience, once you start probing like that, you will get so many solutions, you get so many answers. Some of them, it could be beyond the team's capability, but they want your support. They want you to chime in and assist them to remove blockers. So one of the responsibilities of a PM, I've seen it in my experience, is you should be able to remove blockers. Whatever is stopping the team from moving forward, you assist. Even if it's an agile project or approach you're using, there's always retrospective meetings you have with your team. Try to understand, you see, and then try to remove any blockers. So it's quite important that you always ask this question. What is blocking progress? How do we remove? Don't try to always try to subscribe solutions to the team. Let the team come up with the solution. I can tell you it makes your life very easy. The team, they're the ones who are in the trenches. They're the ones who are doing the work. They have better solutions and suggestions than the PM. So always allow the team to suggest solutions. And once they suggest solution, I can tell you they can own the implementation of that solution. So it's quite important that you always ask the question, what is blocking progress? What can be done? Then from what the team is suggesting, you can choose the best solution from that. It's very important to have that conversation with your team. Then the fourth one, this one is very generic. It should come naturally, but you'll find some project managers, they don't normally do that conversation with their team or stakeholders. This is like, can we break down the tasks into manageable tasks or smaller sizes? If you don't ask that as a project manager, you are likely going to have problems in your project. Not everything can be tackled at one go, but the moment you break it down into small items, it makes life very easy. Let me give you a good example of what I normally do for projects. So when I'm doing a project plan, normally what I do is I sit with the team. I know there are some project managers who are quick to sit on their own, close themselves in some building. They come up after 2 days or so with what they are calling the best plan. I don't do that. And it's not always the best. You should always sit with your team. You should always come up with a list or checklist of all the deliverables or the products that you're going to create in the project. Okay? So once you come up with those products or deliverables, expected deliverables of the project, you sequence them. Which one goes first, next, and so on and so forth. So as you sequence those products or deliverables, you might realize that there are actually some which are complex to deliver. They require even external support, like vendors from somewhere else. They require even some other technical knowledge from outside. So the best way is to break them down into smaller activities. You see, for you to end up with a very specific deliverable, most of them, they have some contributory activities towards that. So once you break it down into small activities, it makes it very easy even to assign a responsibility, what we normally call work package. It becomes even very easy to identify the skills required to satisfy some of those deliverables. So it's quite important as a project manager that you should always have the conversation with the team, asking them basic questions. How do we break these tasks? How do we break these deliverables into small components so that they become manageable? And I can tell you, the moment you start breaking down these deliverables into small components, it makes it very easy to do even what is called a schedule estimation or activity estimation. I was requested to rescue one of the projects which was almost going to early exit. And I can tell you, when I got there, I was so shocked. There was a very high level project plan, very high level. And I was asking myself, so how are you managing these things? I could not get an answer. So the first thing I had to do was to take a step backwards, looked at the high level plan, then starting to break it into small activities. Of course, I was working with the team. The team was supporting me on that because my predecessor PM was already gone. So I worked with the team to break down the tasks into small tasks. That was very helpful, I can tell you. And the high level plan was projecting that the project was going to run in about 18 months, if I'm not mistaken. But after breaking down the required tasks, it was going up to 2.5 years, which was very logical, and we delivered in 2.5 years. If you want to understand more about product-based planning, I've also created a video on a product-based planning. It's very powerful, very powerful approach that you can also use. So you should be able to ask the team to break down every task, complex one. Simple task, there's no need to break them down. The complex task, you have to break them down into smaller activities, smaller tasks. And then you can also project how long it's going to take to deliver. It becomes very easy even to create work packages. It becomes very easy even to assign resources to work on the task. So it's quite critical that in a conversation as a project manager, you are always asking the question, you're always telling the team, can we break everything up to the last or the low level activity that can be done? Don't try to have composite or even complex items to be tackled at once. That is very dangerous. If you want to be successful and to succeed, make sure that each and every activity is broken down. There are so many ways to do that. You can even do it at project management level, team level, or even you can even do it at a team member level. But at the end of the day, make sure that any complex task or activity or deliverable is broken down into its constituent components. It makes it very easy. Then the last of the 5 critical conversations expected from a project manager is to ask the question or to discuss with your team, do we have the right resources? Let me expand on this. So a project will have human and non-human resources to be delivered, okay? So it is your responsibility, or it is our responsibility as project managers, to always ask the question, do we have the right resources? And I'm telling you, don't ever make a mistake I've seen with other project managers. They only ask that question from the beginning of the project. That's when you can hear them asking, do we have the right resources? Then they just go quiet. Then it's only when the project is going the other direction, they'll start coming up, maybe shouting at people or members and telling them that you never told me about this resource, you never told me about this, and so on and so forth. That's not the way to converse with your team. Do we have the right resources? Like what I normally do in my projects. Each time I get an opportunity to ask that question, I always ask. It could be when you're doing stage gate or phase gate discussion. If it's agile, when you're doing retrospective discussions, I always ask, do we have the right resources? Human and non-human. Do we have the right skills to deliver this? In some cases, I get very important and very good answers. There are some project members or stakeholders who are very honest to say, yes, we don't have the right resources. We need more. Especially when you're going through the procurement activity or process as a project manager. You might not have the right resources in terms of human resources, in terms of human resources and skills, in terms of non-human, like financial, machinery, all these things. So it's quite important that when you get any opportunity to ask this question about Do we have the right resources? You're asking the right people also. If you ask the wrong people, you might get the wrong answer. Say, for example, it's a vendor who is supporting the project from outside. They are providing some machinery. Do they have enough resources, human resources from their side to deliver the machinery? Do they have enough resources or enough raw materials to provide the product that is required? So it's also your responsibility as a project manager to make sure that you are also conversing with your team on this. You are also asking your team on this. You are also discussing with your team on this. It's very important to do that. So, as a project manager, ask the team at each and every given moment, do we have the right resources? Do we have the right skills? Right resources, human and non-human. Skills to still continue and also deliver the project. So these are the main 5 critical conversations that we expect every project manager to do. No matter what type of project you are implementing, no matter what industry are you working on, no matter the size of the project that you are working on. So in summary, you should be able to ask, is this aligned to our project? Is it aligned to the project's goals and objectives? That is very important. You also need to review what has gone wrong, what has gone right in each and every project. You are also supposed to ask the question, what is blocking progress? Get answers. What is blocking progress? You need to make sure that the project is always progressing. So as a project manager, if you want to call yourself a servant leader, you should always be removing any blockers to the team. That is very, very important. Then the fourth one that you have also to ask is, should we break this into smaller units so that it becomes very manageable? It's also very important to do that. You ask that question. Don't allow yourself to have high-level complex items being presented to you. Then the last one is resources. Do we have the right resources to manage this project? Human, non-human, financial, non-financial, technical, non-technical. So if you are having these conversations with your team or any stakeholder, it becomes very easy. You get to know some of these things before they actually becomes an issue. You get to know even some of the risks before they even materialize to become an issue. So it is very critical that as a project manager, you should always be having a very good relationship with your stakeholders and your team members. Otherwise, if your relationship is not that good, you won't be getting answers when you try to have these conversations with your team. The team will hold on to their questions. The team will hold on to their answers, and the questions will always be coming to you. So it's very critical that you should always be having these conversations with your team as a project manager.